Hi, I'm Bobby Russell. I'm a Microsoft technical trainer. I'm here to walk you through the SC-200 Microsoft Security Operations course. Welcome to Learning Path 8, which is Managing Content in Microsoft Sentinel. After completing this module, you'll be able to use solutions from the Content Hub, as well as connect repositories to deploy different content within your organization. The Content Hub in Microsoft Sentinel brings together a wide range of solutions to help you build and scale your security operations. It includes essentials like data connectors and parsers to bring in the normalized data, along with workbooks and analytics rules for visualization and detection. You also get hunting queries and notebooks for proactive threat investigation, plus watch lists that you can use to enrich your detections. Finally, playbooks and custom connectors let you automate responses using Azure Logic apps. It's a full toolkit designed to streamline everything from your data ingestion to your overall incident response. You can connect external repositories like GitHub or Azure DevOps to your Microsoft Sentinel workspace to manage custom content more effectively. This setup allows you to develop and update your analytics rules, workbooks, and other content outside of Sentinel. Then you can automatically deploy these changes to your workspaces. It's a great way to integrate version control and CI/CD pipeline practices into your security operations. Whether you're working solo or as part of a larger SecOps team, this approach helps streamline content management and keeps your environment consistent and up to date. So, let's jump into our next module, Module 2, which will cover connecting data to Microsoft Sentinel and using data connectors. After we've completed this module, you'll be able to explain the use of data connectors in Microsoft Sentinel. And you'll also be able to describe the Microsoft Sentinel data connector providers that are out there, or at least some of them. To start collecting log data in Microsoft Sentinel, you'll use data connectors available through the Content Hub. These connectors are bundled into solutions like Azure Activity, Cisco Umbrella, and Microsoft Defender XDR. And these can be installed and bring in logs from various sources. Each solution includes metadata like the provider, the support level, and category, helping you choose the right integrations for your environment. Once installed, these connectors enable seamless ingestion of telemetry into Sentinel for analysis, detection, and response. Microsoft Sentinel supports a wide range of data connector providers to help you bring in security data from across your environment. These include native integrations and with Microsoft Defender XDR services, Azure Platform Services, and Windows Security Events via the Azure Monitoring Agent or AMA agent. You can also connect third-party sources using vendor connectors, custom built connectors, or the Common Event Format or CEF connector. This flexibility ensures you can centralize and normalize telemetry from both Microsoft and non-Microsoft sources for a comprehensive threat detection and response capability. Microsoft Sentinel supports several options for building custom data connectors, giving you flexibility to bring in data from virtually any source. You can use tools like the Codeless Connector Platform, Azure Monitoring Agent, or Logstash plugin for streamlined integration. For more advanced scenarios, Logic Apps, the Log Analytics API, and Azure Functions let you build highly customizable ingestion pipelines. These options are ideal when working with niche systems or when you need to enrich or transform data before it hits your workspace. So let's dive into our third module, which is going to be connecting Microsoft services to Microsoft Sentinel. Now, once you've completed this module, you'll be able to connect Microsoft Service data connectors. You'll be able to explain how connectors auto-create incidents in Sentinel, and you'll be able to activate the Microsoft Defender for Cloud connector in Microsoft Sentinel. When planning Microsoft Services connectors in Sentinel, there are a few key things to keep in mind. For Defender for Cloud, you'll need a log analytics workspace with both read and write permissions. If you're using Windows Security Events connector, using the Azure Monitoring Agent, it will automatically create data collection rules during setup. Also, keep in mind that incidents are only created in the security alert table. So that's where you'll want to focus your overall detection logic. To connect Microsoft Defender for Cloud to Microsoft Sentinel, you can use the subscription-based or legacy connector. This streams security events directly into the security alert table. This setup requires appropriate workspace and user permissions, and the subscription must be on an active Defender for Cloud pricing tier. You can enable incident creation from all incoming events or choose which subscriptions to connect to by checking them off during your configuration. Just keep in mind that bidirectional sync isn't supported with the legacy connector, and contributor permissions are required to complete these setups. The tenant-based Microsoft Defender for Cloud connector, which is in preview, lets you stream alerts directly into both the Microsoft Sentinel security alert table and Defender XDR incidents. To set it up, you need read and write permissions on the workspace itself, and you'll need proper connector access control and tenant-level roles like security administrator or be a global administrator. Once connected, new Defender for Cloud incidents will automatically flow into your Sentinel workspace. For full incident correlation, it's also recommended to connect the Microsoft 365 Defender incidents pane. Very important. Connecting the Microsoft Entra ID connector to Microsoft Sentinel allows you to streamline audit and sign-in logs for deeper visibility into your identity-related activities. These include insights into successful and failed sign-ins, risky user behavior, app access, device usage, and changes to the tenant resources. To set it up, you'll need read and write permissions for diagnostic settings and a tenant-level role like either global administrator or security administrator. Once connected, you can leverage built-in workbooks, queries, and analytics rule templates to monitor and respond to identity threats a lot more effectively. Azure Content Hub offers a variety of built-in solutions that include data connectors for key services like Azure Activity, DDoS protection, firewall, Azure Key Vault, SQL databases, and a WAF, a web application firewall. These connectors make it easy to ingest telemetry from your core Azure services directly into Microsoft Sentinel, which allows for monitoring and analysis. Each solution is packaged with relevant content like analytics rules and workbooks to help you get started quickly with it. It's a streamlined way to enhance visibility and your threat detection across your entire Azure environment. So now let's jump into our next module, which is Module 4. And in here, we'll look at connecting Microsoft Defender XDR to Microsoft Sentinel. After completing this module, you'll be able to activate the Microsoft Defender XDR connector in Sentinel. This highlights the key Microsoft Defender XDR connectors you can integrate with your Microsoft Sentinel. It includes connectors for Microsoft Defender XDR itself, a Defender for Office 365, a Defender for Endpoint, each color-coded for easy identification. These connectors help bring in alerts and telemetry from across your Microsoft security stack, enabling unified incident detection and response. It's a foundational step of building a comprehensive cross-domain security operations workflow. The Microsoft Defender XDR connector allows you to stream incidents, alerts, and advanced hunting data from multiple Defender services like Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, and Defender for Cloud Apps into your Microsoft Sentinel environment. To set it up, you'll need read-write permissions on the workspace itself, you'll need proper access control, and you'll need a valid M365 E5 license or an equivalent license. Once connected, you can enable incident and alert syncing, and it's recommended to disable Sentinel incident creation rules for those products to avoid any type of duplication. This connector is key for unifying the threat detection and response across all your Microsoft security ecosystem environments. Microsoft Sentinel includes built-in connectors for additional Microsoft Defender solutions like Defender for Threat Intelligence and Defender for IoT. These connectors allow you to bring in specialized threat data and telemetry from operational technology environments, directly into your Sentinel deployment. Integrating these sources enhances your visibility and it strengthens your detection and response capabilities across both IT and OT landscapes. It's a key step in building a more comprehensive and unified security operations center. So now that we've completed that, let's dive into our next module, Module 5, where we'll look at connecting Windows hosts to our Microsoft Sentinel environment. So once you've completed this, you'll be able to connect Azure Windows virtual machines to Microsoft Sentinel. You'll be able to connect non-Azure virtual machines and hosts to Microsoft Sentinel. And you'll be able to configure Azure Monitor agents to collect security events. To manage security events on Windows hosts in Microsoft Sentinel, you can use the Content Hub. That supports data ingestion via the Azure Monitoring Agent. This includes solutions for Windows security events, Windows Server, DNS, and Windows forwarding events. Each solution installs the necessary data connectors and sets up DCR, data collection rules, to streamline your overall log collection. This setup helps centralize this and standardize how security data is gathered and analyzed across your Windows infrastructure. The Windows Security Events via AMA connector offers several advantages for managing log collection at scale, including centralized configuration through your data collection rule, or DCRs, improved performance, and overall cost efficiency. It also allows you to share the Azure Monitoring Agent across multiple solutions, streamlining your deployment. However, some features are still in public preview, so not everything may be production ready. If you're working with non-Azure VMs, you'll need to onboard them using Azure Arc to take true full advantage of this setup process. The Windows Security Events via AMA connector is a Microsoft-provided solution in the Sentinel Content Hub that enables ingestion of Windows security event logs using the Azure Monitor Agent. It's categorized under Security Threat Protection and is the recommended option moving forward. And the reason for that is the legacy agent has been deprecated as of August of 2024. The interface allows you to install this solution directly and provides a clear comparison between the AMA-based and legacy connectors. For environments that support AMA, this is the preferred and future-proof method for collecting Windows security logs. So here you'll see that this walks you through the configuration of the Windows Security Events collection using the Azure Monitoring Agent in your Microsoft Sentinel. It highlights the need for workspace-level data access and the use of data collection rules to target Windows systems specifically. You can scope the configuration to specific resource groups or machines, including Azure VMs and non-Azure Windows servers that are connected using the Azure Arc Agent. This setup ensures you're collecting only the relevant security events while maintaining control over where and how data is ingested. The setup interface here that you see here walks you through configuring the Windows Security Events collector using the Azure Monitoring Agent in Microsoft Sentinel. You can choose the level of event detail you want to collect, ranging from all events to minimal or even custom events if you choose, based on your monitoring needs and your cost considerations. The interface also includes a data collection rule creation panel and a visual summary of the event trends to help guide your overall configuration. It's a flexible way to fine-tune what security data gets ingested into your Sentinel workspaces. So now let's dive into our sixth module. In this case, we're going to talk about how do we connect common event format logs to our Microsoft Sentinel deployment. Once we've completed this module, you'll be able to explain what the common event format connector deployment options are, as well as explain what the common event format and syslog connector, what the differences are between them. The common event format, or CEF connector, is designed to streamline log ingestion from third-party appliances into Microsoft Sentinel using a dedicated syslog forwarder server. This server runs on a Linux machine with the Azure Monitoring Agent installed and supports both Azure and on-premise deployments. Ceph is preferred over the basic syslog connector because it delivers structured, parsed data, making it easier to work with in queries and analytics. It's also widely used by many vendor-specific connectors in Sentinel, making it very flexible and a scalable option for integrating external systems into your environment. So what you see here is a diagram that outlines how Ceph logs are collected in Microsoft Sentinel using the Azure Monitoring Agent connector. Keep in mind this is still in preview. Logs from a Ceph source are sent via syslog, which is either going to be TCP or UDP port 514, to a Linux forwarder running a syslog daemon like rsyslog or syslog-ng. From there, the logs are passed into the Azure Monitoring Agent, which securely transmits them over HTTPS, which is our TCP port 443. And this is sent to your Sentinel workspace. This setup enables structured, reliable log ingestion from third-party sources directly into your Sentinel for analysis and detection. You need to designate and configure a Linux machine to forward the logs from your solution to your Microsoft Sentinel workspace. This machine can be a physical or a virtual machine on-premise if you want to. It can be an Azure VM or another VM in another cloud. Using the link provided, you will run a script on the designated machine that performs the following tasks. First, it installs the Azure Monitoring Agent for Linux and configures it for the following purposes. We're listening for Ceph messages from the built-in either Linux syslog daemon or on using port TCP 25226. Then we send the messages securely over TLS to your Microsoft Sentinel workspace, where it's then parsed and enriched. During this time, we're listening for syslog messages from your security solution using port TCP port 514. And we're forwarding only the messages it identifies as Ceph to the Azure Monitoring Agent on your local host using port, and again, this is going to be TCP port 25226. So now, let's dive into Module 7. We've talked about connecting other sources, so now we're going to look at connecting syslog data sources into Microsoft Sentinel. So after you're done with this module, you'll be able to describe the syslog data collection rule, the overall configuration of it. You'll be able to understand what the Azure Monitoring Agent is and how we deploy it within a Linux environment. You'll be able to create and configure a data collection rule to send data to Microsoft Sentinel, and you'll be able to create a parser using KQL in Microsoft Sentinel. The syslog connector in Microsoft Sentinel lets you stream events from Linux-based systems or appliances that support syslog. It works by using the Azure Monitoring Agent for Linux, which listens on TCP port 25224, and it's listening for messages forwarded by the local syslog daemon. These messages are then sent securely over HTTPS to your log analytics workspace and stored in the syslog table. This setup is ideal for centralizing Linux event logs and integrating them into your broader Sentinel analytics and detection workflows. So this diagram here shows how syslog messages are ingested into your Azure Monitor using Azure Monitoring Agent on Linux systems. Syslog daemons like rsyslog or syslog-ng collect the logs and forward them over TCP ports to the Azure Monitoring Agent. From there, the agent sends the data to Azure Monitor, where it's stored in the syslog table for analysis. The table includes fields like computer, facility, severity level, host IP, and syslog messages, giving you detailed visibility into your Linux-based infrastructure. This setup guide walks you through creating a data collection rule to collect syslog data from your Azure Linux host in Microsoft Sentinel. You start by selecting the machine you want to monitor. It could either be a native Azure VM or a VM running Azure Arc, and define the scope within the same region. Once you've added it, the Azure Monitoring Agent is automatically deployed to these machines to enable log collection. This approach ensures consistent and scalable ingestion of syslog data into your Sentinel workspace for analysis and for alerting. Now you'll see that we're highlighting how you can connect non-Azure Linux hosts to Microsoft Sentinel using Azure Arc. This example shows a server named Ubuntu One that successfully onboarded with details like the OS version, the resource group, and the monitoring agent status. Azure Arc acts as a bridge, allowing you to manage and monitor non-Azure VMs just like Azure resources. This setup is essential for extending Sentinel's visibility and control to hybrid or on-premise environments. So here you see the collect and deliver. In this step, the Azure portal, what we're doing is we're configuring a data collection rule. The user is adding a Linux syslog data source and specifying facilities like the log auth and log cron with severity set to log debug. The configuration ensures that only events matching these exact parameters will be collected. This targeted approach helps reduce noise and focus on relative log data for monitoring and analytics. The syslog connector writes log data to the syslog table. One difference from the Ceph collector is that the message's data is stored in a string field named syslog message. The Ceph, or Common Event Format connector, writes to the common security log table with the fields already parsed. For syslog, you'll need to parse fields on every query, and that uses a sysmon table, or you have to write a parser. A parser is a KQL function that is a query saved as a function and then referenced with the function name. The reference to the function name is like accessing another table. By creating parsers, you only need to write the syslog message parsing once. In the logs window, create a query. Select the save button and set the function from the dropdown. Then specify function name and alias. In this case, if we create the function named myParser, I then can access the table using the name myParser. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into our next module, Module 8, which now we're going to look at connecting threat indicators into Microsoft Sentinel. After completing this module, you'll be able to install the Threat Intelligence connector from the Content Hub, and you'll be able to use threat intelligence analytics rules, hunting queries, and workbooks. You'll be able to configure threat intelligence connectors in Microsoft Sentinel, as well as view threat indicators, which is the threat intelligence indicator table in your Microsoft Sentinel logs. The threat intelligence solution in Microsoft Sentinel is designed to enhance detection and investigation capabilities using threat indicators. It includes analytics rules that trigger alerts and incidents based on log event matches, along with workbooks that summarize threat data for easier analysis. Security teams can also leverage built-in hunting queries to explore and investigate threats more proactively. Data ingestion is handled through connectors like the Taxi and the Upload Indicators API, Microsoft Defender, Threat Intelligence, and other threat intelligence platforms. This outlines how to install the Threat Intelligence Content Connector from the Content Hub. It includes 5 key data connectors, like the Taxi connector, the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, both the standard and premium, as well as APIs for uploading custom indicators. The interface displays each connector's status, version, and installation options, making it easier to manage integrations. There's also a detailed view of the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence connector, including a brief description and a small graph showing data trends. It's a streamlined way to centralize and operationalize threat intel across multiple sources. So let's look at the Microsoft Sentinel Analytics interface, where your threat intelligence analytic rule templates are being configured. The rules are organized by severity, and this goes from high to medium to low, as well as informational. And for each, it includes metadata like the rule type, the data sources, the MITRE tactics and techniques, and the originating source. A specific rule, in this case, TI Map IP Entity to Azure Activity is selected, showing its description and configuration options. These templates are used to generate alerts and incidents based on threat intel matches. This helps teams automate detection workflows. It's a powerful way to let me do that part again. These templates are used to generate alerts and incidents based on threat intelligence matches, helping teams automate detection workflows. It's a powerful way to operationalize threat indicators directly within Sentinel. This explains how to connect threat intelligence data to Microsoft Sentinel using the Upload Indicators API. You can either push indicators directly from your app using REST methods, or integrate them through a threat intelligence platform like MISP or MindMeld. It walks through the prerequisites like needing a workspace ID and right permissions, and outlines the steps to authenticate with your Entra ID and send indicators using a post request. The configuration includes setting up headers and formatting a body in sticks. There's also a graph showing upload activity over time, which helps visualize data flow into your Sentinel. Here is the Microsoft Sentinel Logs interface, where threat intelligence indicators are being queried and analyzed. The query filters are key fields like time generated, description, network IP, and URL, giving a focused look at recent threat data. The results table shows entries from the last 24 hours, including phishing-related indicators. It's a quick way to surface actionable intel from ingested data and pivot into an investigation, or you can use it for rule tuning. This kind of query is great for validating indicator ingestion and spotting trends in real time. So now that we've completed this learning path, feel free to watch some of these topics demonstrated in the following labs.
All right, so now that we've talked about connecting logs to Sentinel, let's walk through the steps here in a lab environment and demonstrate how we actually connect logs to Microsoft Sentinel. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to log into our machine, which we've done. We're going to go to the Azure portal. And within the Azure portal, we're going to go to Sentinel. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to connect to Microsoft Sentinel. So we're going to in search bar, type in Sentinel. And within here, you'll see our Sentinel instance, which is right here. So we're going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to continue on with our task. Now, in order to connect logs to Sentinel, one of the first things that we'll need to do, or the first thing that we'll need to do, assuming we've got the prerequisites configured in Sentinel already, is we'll need to go to the Content Hub. And in the Content Hub, this is where you have the ability to install your data connectors. Keep in mind that it's a two-step process. Step one is installing the connector, and then step two is actually configuring the connector. So in our Content Hub page, this is where we can go in and we can install that connector. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go in and we're going to install the Defender for Cloud connector. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a search here for the Microsoft Defender for Cloud connector. And here you'll see that we have that connector now. This connector has been installed already, but basically all you would do is you would select the connector itself. And then on the bottom right here, there'll be an option to install it, but we've have it installed here already. So now what we're going to do is we're going to configure that connector. So in order to do that, we're going to select Manage here on the bottom right. And in here, we're going to select the subscription-based version of the connector, and we're going to open up the connector page for that specific connector. So now you'll see there's a few things that I want to point out, and this is going to be pretty much typical for every connector that you install. On the left side, it'll show you the status. So in this case, it's disconnected. If it's disconnected, that typically means a few things. Normally, it's either not configured or there's something wrong with the connector. It's not configured properly, or it's turned disconnect. It's not configured at all. It'll tell you the provider. So this is a Microsoft connector, since it's for Defender for Cloud. the last time that it received any data. So in this case, because we haven't configured the connector yet, there's no data that's been received. You get a description of your connector. And again, this is going to be common across all connectors. And then if you scroll further down, you'll get data related things. So this connector doesn't provide any additional workbooks. It does provide 2 queries that we can run. It also gives us 2 rules templates that we can run. As you notice here, there's no data that has been received yet. And again, that has to do with the fact that we haven't connected and configured the connector yet. And then last but not least, here is the table that will be created, or if the table is already created, here's the table in which this connector will send its log data to. So those are the options that you have. And for the most part, every connector is going to look the same, except for there may be different table types. And some connectors will have multiple tables that it will use. But generally speaking, what you see on the left is common. On the right side, this is where the connectors will vary. They'll all have a prerequisite in the configuration section. But what are the prereqs in order for that connector to be enabled? So in this case here, it just needs a workspace with read and write permissions. You need to have a license and a valid subscription with permissions on it. So those are the things that you need. In this case here, we're good to go. So then we're going to look at our configuration section. And this is how you actually configure the connector. Remember, I told you there's 2 steps: installing the connector and then configuring it. So here we're configuring the connector. So for this connector, it's fairly simple. It's just a matter of going in and connecting the Defender for Cloud to Sentinel. So it's just a matter of selecting connected in this scenario here. Now, if I do want bidirectional sync, where anything coming, any alerts coming from Defender for Cloud will be sent to Sentinel. And if we close the alert in Sentinel, then because we can do bidirectional sync, it will actually close the connector in Defender for Cloud for us also. So you do have that option for that. But if you notice here, Defender for Cloud's enhanced security features aren't enabled for your subscription to receive alerts. So you'd have to go in and enable it for your subscriptions if you want to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and upgrade. All right, so we have it upgraded now. So if we go back to Sentinel and go through the process again, then you will see the ability, or you'll have the ability to go in and actually do that. So let's go back into our page here. And let's just verify that our connector is enabled. And you'll notice here that it is enabled for a subscription base. So we're good to go there. There we go. We show it's connected here. And so we're good to go. So because now we've got the enhanced security features enabled, because we've upgraded our Defender for Cloud, we now have the ability to enable bidirectional sync as part of this process. One thing you'll notice here for the connector, there's no save option. As you make the changes, it automatically saves it. So now we've got the Defender for Cloud connector enabled within Sentinel. So what you'll notice here is the status changed to connected. Now keep in mind, some connectors may take longer for the status to change. Even if you configure it, it may take a few minutes for it to update and show connected. This one, because we refreshed the page, it went a little bit faster for us here, but it does show connected. And if we give it enough time, we will see some data being received into Sentinel, into our log analytics workspace as part of this. So that's the first process that we have. So now that we've connected Defender for Cloud to Sentinel, now let's go in and let's configure some additional connectors that we can use as part of this. So the next connector that we're going to configure is going to be the Azure Activity Data Connector. So in our Content Hub, we're going to go to Azure Activity. We're going to do a search here. Here's our Azure Activity Data Connector. And if you notice here, there's multiple things that are included with this. And you'll see this for some connectors out there. This is not uncommon. So we're going to go in. It's already installed. By the way, if the connector hasn't been installed already, you would just select it, and then there'll be an option here to install it. But for this purpose of this lab demonstration, we've already pre-installed it, and it's just a matter of clicking the install button. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to configure this Azure Activity Connector. So we're going to select Manage. And if you notice here for this one here, it does give you a very similar things that we had for our Defender for Cloud connector. On the right side here are all the different features. So to give you an idea, you're going to get one data connector, which is what we have right here. You're going to get 14 analytics rules, which is the things that you see here. And if you scroll down, you'll notice here that we get 15 hunting cores. So you'll find this with some of the connectors. We call this a solution where there's multiple things, not just connectors, but you get some reports, some queries and things like that that are included as part of this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go in and we're going to enable this connector. So enable this connector, we're going to turn that on here. So we're going to open up the connector page for it. And for this one, you'll notice that it's a little, as I mentioned before, different connectors are configured different ways. For this one here, we do meet all the prereqs, but if you go down to the configuration section, we have to launch a policy wizard in order to do this. So we're going to launch a policy wizard. For the scope of this connector, we're going to pick our subscription. So basically everything in this subscription will be part of this policy that we're setting up. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all of our activity logs and it's going to stream it or send it to our Sentinel log analytics workspace. So we're going to specify that. Now, in this case here, if we need to, we can make some additional customization, and we're going to do that. So under our parameters tab here, for the log analytics workspace, we've got to tell the system, remember, we're going to send all the activity logs to a workspace. So in our parameters field, we've got to define what log analytics workspace we want to send it to. So we're going to send it to this specific workspace here as part of our process. Now, there's another option we're going to configure for this one, which is our remediation. And what we want to do here is what remediation does is it goes in and says, okay, if for some reason it doesn't work, how are we going to fix the problem? So in this case here, once you select remediation, we're going to create a remediation task. And what this does is any resource that doesn't have their activity logs sent to the workspace will have their activity logs sent to the workspace. If you notice here, it says, by default, all assignments will only take effect on newly created resources. But what about existing things? So this remediation task will go through our existing resources and make sure if this is not set, it's going to go in there and configure the logs to be sent to our workspace. So let's go ahead and create this process. And it'll go through, if you notice here, the policy has been created. So it's going through and it's completed that. So now what's going to happen is all my Azure activity logs will be sent to my Sentinel log analytics workspace that we can use later on for analytics and other things. So the not connected status here, let's do a quick refresh. Again, sometimes it'll show up fairly quickly. Sometimes it does take a few minutes for the status to change. It's still showing not connected here, but it is configured. So if you're following along and doing these labs in your own lab environment, what I always recommend is that just continue on with all the other labs and then come back once you're done. By then, the status should have changed from not connected to connected. So it does take some time, unless you just want to wait. But normally I just say continue on with your lab and then at the end, come back and look at those to make sure they're connected. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do another demonstration. And in this demonstration, what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling log data from Windows machines. Now, here's the thing. We're going to pull log data from Windows machines inside and outside of Azure. So Inside of Azure would be your Azure VMs, but outside would be things like on-premise or your public cloud environment. So if you're using AWS or Google or another third-party cloud environment, or your on-prem Windows servers, if you want to send those logs into Sentinel, we're going to walk through that process now. So let's go ahead and go back to our main Sentinel page. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the process of building a machine first. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're within our main, I say Sentinel, but within our main page here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a resource. And the resource that we're going to create in this scenario is going to be a Windows 10 machine. So let's go to the marketplace here. Let's find our Windows 10 machine. And you're more than welcome to try this in your lab environments. So we're going to select Windows 10 as our type. Let's go back in here. And in our dropdown for Windows 10, we're going to select the 22H2 version. So we're going to go with Windows 10 Pro. Actually, we're going to do Enterprise. So we're going to do Windows 10 Enterprise version 22H2. So that's the type of VM that we're going to build in this demonstration. So in here, let's go ahead and put it into our resource group. We're going to give our virtual machine a name. So let's change it up a little bit here, and let's go ahead and create a new resource group. So let's go ahead and create a new resource group for this, just to kind of separate it here. And then we're going to give our machine a name. So let's call it AZWin01. We're going to keep the region the way it is here. We're not going to do any redundancy for this lab environment, just to make things a little bit simpler. We're going to use it as a standard VM, and the VM type that we're going to do is going to be Windows 10 Enterprise 22H2 x64 Gen 2. So we're going to keep that image for our demonstration here. Now for the size at the bottom here, we are going to change that, and we're going to go with let's go ahead and change our size here. We're going to go with a standard D2DS. So we're going to go with a standard D2DS V4 is what we're going to use. So we're going to use that size in our demonstration here. There we go. And then we're going to come up with a local password here. So I'm going to do local admin and then password. So we're going to put our password in. We're going to agree to the licensing terms here. For the most part, we're going to keep everything else the same. Let's go ahead and validate this. Yep, and I forgot something here. Yep, I forgot to confirm the password. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so our validation has passed. So we're going to go ahead and create this virtual machine. And once it's created, we're going to wait for this machine to be created. So this will take a few minutes. And of course, with the magic of recordings, we will fast forward through here. Okay, so now our deployment has been completed. So let's go ahead and go to the virtual machine. So here's our virtual machine, AZWin01. Now, the reason we're doing this is we're going to and this is going to be an Azure VM. So we're going to walk you through how to connect an Azure VM to Sentinel, but we're also going to demonstrate how to connect a non-Azure VM. So something sitting on-prem in another cloud provider. So this is going to be the first of the two VMs that we're going to connect to pull logs into Sentinel. So now what we're going to do is we're going to configure our on-premise or simulated on-premise machine as part of this. So we're going to go in and we're going to jump into one of our other servers here. This is our on-premise Windows server. And what we're going to do is we're going to prepare this to be able to send logs to our log analytics workspace. Now, in order for an on-premise or non-Azure machine, whether it's physical or virtual, in order for that to send its log data, it does require some sort of agent, whether it's the log analytics agent or Azure Arc agent or something similar to that. So what we're going to do in our scenario here is we're going to use the Azure Arc agent to do this. Now, keep in mind that I've already pre-downloaded the agent itself. So it's just going to be a matter of me going in and installing it. So we're going to do an AZC, so Azure Arc Management Connect. This is the resource group it's going to be put in, which is the resource group we created just a few seconds ago. This is the region it'll be in. And then here's the subscription that it will be tied to. So we're going to go ahead and launch this. And it will go through the process of installing it. So it is asking for authentication. So let's go ahead and authenticate here. And this is an account that has rights to add machines to Azure Arc. So just one of my admin machines here. So if you notice the authentication completed, so I'm going to close out of this because it's continued on here. So it's going through the process. This will take about a minute for this, and then you'll see another status here where it's installing and loading some additional things. So once this is completed, then we will have a machine that's not in Azure, but because it's running the Azure Arc agent, it can still be managed by Azure. It's still visible within Azure, which is important. So we're going to wait for that to finish, and then we're going to continue on with our process here. All right, so the process is completed. So you can see here that everything is successful here with no problems. So now I have a virtual machine that's simulated on premise that now can be managed by Azure. So at this point, what we're going to do is let's just do a quick verification just to make sure that it actually completed. So we're going to do an AZC or Azure Arc Management show, and you'll see here that it is fully configured. Here's my server. Here's the resource group that it's located in, the region that it's located in. So I know, and then down here is the important part right here. It shows that my Azure Arc service is running as part of this. So now that I've got that done, let's go ahead and shift gears here and go back to our primary machine, and let's continue on with this. So now I have an Azure VM, and I have an on-prem VM that's running Azure Arc that we can continue on with our demonstration here. So at this point, let's go ahead and connect those devices. So we're going to go back to Sentinel. We're going to launch our instance of Sentinel here. And we're going to go to our Content Hub. And within our Content Hub, what we're going to do here is we're going to pull the security event logs. So we're going to look for Windows security events here. Here's our Windows security event. So we're going to go ahead and configure that. So on the bottom right here, it'll pop up in a second for manage. So let's go ahead and manage our Windows security events. Again, everything on the left here, very similar to all the other agents. But here on the right, so this one's a little bit different, and here's why. This one actually has two different data connectors that you can use, whereas some of our other connectors only had one. And this is not unusual. Some of our connectors, some of the connectors, not just necessarily Microsoft connectors, but there are third-party connectors that also will have multiple connector types as part of that. But you also see we're getting 20 rules, we're getting 50 hunting queries, and we're also getting 2 workbooks along with this. So what we're going to do here in this case is we're going to install the AMA, the Azure Monitoring Agent. This is the newer agent. You can also install the legacy agent. The big difference between the two is the legacy agent requires that you install an agent on every box. So you download the install file, then you have to push it through a group policy or manually install it on all your devices. With the Azure Monitoring Agent, the AMA agent, this is a newer agent. So it can go out and automatically through what we call data collection rules, it can go through and install those agents automatically. So we're going to install the AMA agent, and we're going to open up the connector page for AMA. So you'll see we're now in the Windows Event AMA agent page, and we're going to go ahead and configure it. So as I mentioned before, we don't install an agent manually. We use what's called data collection rules. So let's go ahead and create a data collection rule. And we give our rule a name. So in this case here, we'll call it the AZ-Win DCR, the subscription, and then the resource group that the resources are located that this rule is going to apply to. So now this is the magic of using the AMA agent with what's called data collection rules. In the old days with the legacy agent, I would have to remember, or someone would have to remember every time a machine is built to install the agent. If someone forgot or we didn't have a process in place, the agent would not be installed and we would not be able to pull those logs, which could be challenging in a large enterprise. With the newer AMA, Azure Monitoring Agent, we've kind of fixed that problem, because now what we can do is we can essentially create a data collection rule, which is a rule that says anytime a new machine shows up in here, and then automatically configure the log capturing. So that's what this is. Now you can do various scopes. So anytime a machine is built, deployed in the subscription, or I could be more granular and say anytime a machine is deployed inside of this resource group. So anytime a VM is in that resource group, automatically install it. Or I can be very granular if I want to. So in this case, if you notice here is my Win server. This is the on-premise machine. And the reason that this shows up is because I installed the Azure Arc agent. And then you'll see the Azure Win 01, which is the VM that's actually sitting in Azure. I built it in Azure. If I did not install Azure Arc on my on-premise server, it would not show up here. So this is the importance of installing Azure Arc. So we're going to go in, we're going to select those two machines, and then we have to define what is it that we want to collect. So in this scenario, we're going to pull all the logs, all the security logs. But I do have the ability to do common, minimal, or I can even put in specific logs that I want to capture. This is the other nice thing about the AMA agent with data collection rules. It simplifies this. So then we're going to go ahead and review it, make sure we've got everything. Our validation is passed. So let's go ahead and create that. So now what we've done is we've gone in and we've taken an on-premise machine as well as a Azure VM, and we've now configured Sentinel to pull logs, the security event logs from those systems. And in time, what will happen is this will show connected. This takes a little bit of time also. And you'll also see some data pop up in here as those logs are pulled from the on-premise and our Azure VM. So that completes the next set of exercises that we had, which is connecting a Windows VM, whether it's on outside of Azure or inside of Azure, into Sentinel to start capturing logs. So now let's go with our final demonstration for this environment, our lab environment, which is going to be, what about Linux machines? You know, a lot of enterprises use Linux. It's a very common platform out there. So let's walk through the process for configuring Linux machines. Now, in order to do this, we need to have a Linux machine. So we're going to switch over to our Linux machines here. And we're going to go ahead and log into the Linux machine here. Okay, so now we're logged into our Linux machine successfully. There is something important that we do need to note as part of this here, and that is going to be the IP address that we have here, which is 192.168.1.31. So you do need to take note of the IP address that we have, which is this IP address here. So if you're going to do this lab and follow along, that is important that you know. So now that we've successfully authenticated into our Linux machine, let's go back to our Windows machine here for a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to remotely install what we need from PowerShell. So we're not going to manually do it from Linux. We're actually going to do it remotely using SSH. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to open up a PowerShell window here. And within our PowerShell window, we're going to go ahead and we're going to connect to that machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the IP address of that Linux machine as part of our processor. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to connect to 192.168.1.31, and we're going to log in as root. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say yes. All right, so now we're in. So let's go ahead and authenticate. So now I've got a remote SSH connection to our Linux machine. So let's go ahead and install the Azure Arc agent. Now keep in mind, as with before, I've already downloaded the agent to the Linux machine. I'm now just going to install it. So we're going to go ahead and install this agent here, which I just doubled it up here. Let's get rid of this here. There we go. So similar to what you saw with the Windows machine, we're now installing the Azure Arc agent on our Linux machine. And we're going to follow a very similar process here. We've got to install the Azure Arc agent because in order to be able to manage it using data collection rules, similar to our Windows machine, we've got to have that Azure Arc agent installed. So we'll wait for this to complete here. It's going to, it's asking us to go, and this is actually very important because it's instead of prompting us, it's asking us to go to this URL. So we're going to go here to authenticate. So we're going to go here. And it's asking for the code. So we're going to put this code in here. All right. And it says, okay, now we're connected. So you'll see that the installation process continues. So this is a very important part when you're remotely doing it versus on the machine itself. It's going to ask you to log in and put in this code. It's going to ask you to go to this URL, I should say, and then put in this code. And then from there, you put in your credentials. And now it's going through the process. And as you can see here, it has successfully installed the Azure Arc agent on our machine. So now that we have that done, the next thing we can do, similar to our what we did earlier with our Windows machine, I can go in and I can verify that the Arc agent is installed properly. I can do a show, and similar to what we had with our Windows machine earlier, there you go. It says it's showing as active, so we're good to go. All right, so now we've got one of our Linux machines connected to Azure for management purposes. So let's go back to Sentinel, and within Sentinel, let's go back to the main page here. So now we're going to install, or we're going to manage those Linux machines. We're going to start pulling some logs from the Linux machines. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull from here. We're going to use what's called the common event format to pull the log data. You hear this referred to as a CEF connector, CEF, common event format connector. So let's go ahead and go in here and manage this. And similar to what we did before, everything on the left is the same here. We've got, in this case, two data connectors. You've got two data connectors sitting here that we can use. So we're going to go in and do that. We've also got one workbook that comes with when we install this Content Hub. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to install the AMA agent because we're using the Azure Arc agent. So we're going to open up the connector page. And similar to what we did before, we're going to create a data collection rule. We're going to create a new data collection rule here for our Linux machines. So we're going to call it azlindcr. We're going to keep everything else the same. And then we're going to expand this just like we did before. But you'll notice here that now I have my Linux machine that shows up here. So now I have the ability to go in and we're going to select that machine. And we can pick, just like with Windows, we can pick which logs we want to pull. So in this case here, anything with messages without pry header or of severity, I can go in here and I can specify, what levels I want. We're going to create this. So now what we've done is we've gone in and we've gone in and we said, okay, now let's pull logs from our Linux machines, and we can define which exact logs that we want. So that's the process that you would use to connect a Linux machine to your environment. And you can use the common event format, the Ceph connector, the AMA agent to do that, which you see right here. So we're going to do one more demonstration here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to pull logs from a Linux machine using a syslog connector. So we're going to use a syslog connector in this case here. So in order to do this, there's a couple things. So first of all, we need to go back to our Content Hub and let's look at our syslog connector here. So we're going to do a search for syslog. So here's our syslog connector, and notice here it gives us a bunch of options. So we're going to go ahead and manage that. So these are, let's see. So again, on the left, very similar to everything else. On the right, this is what we can install in this case here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in, and this time we're going to use the legacy connector. Remember, in order to use the AMA connector, it's either got to be an Azure VM or a machine that has Azure Arc, the Arc agent installed. So now we're going to simulate a VM that does not have the Azure Arc agent installed. So how would we do it in that scenario? So we're going to go and we're going to open up the connector page. And I mentioned earlier that the AMA agent makes things easier because if you use a legacy agent, then you've got to remember to always install the agent every time a new machine is built. And that's what we're going to demonstrate here now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in, we're going to install an agent on a non-Linux machine. So you'll notice here, we have two options: install an agent on a Linux VM, install an agent on a non-Linux VM. So in this case here, agent on a Linux machine, an Azure Linux or a non-Azure Linux, I should say, not Linux and non-Linux. So we're going to install the agent on a machine that's running Linux that is not in Azure. So in order to do this, what we'll need to do is download the agent. So we're going to go ahead and download the agent here. We need to download the Linux agent. So there we go. There's our Linux agent here. So we're going to download the Linux agent as part of this here. So once we've downloaded the Linux agent, then what we need to do is we're going to simulate a second Linux machine. So we're going to go to our second Linux machine here because I need the IP address for it. So it's going to be 192.168.1.32. So we're going to use this IP address, and similar to our last machine, we're going to open up a remote shell connection to it, SSH connection. Let's exit out of this here. We're going to connect to 32 in this case. So now that we're in our second Linux machine, what we're going to do is we're going to install the agent into that second Linux machine. So in order to do that, what we're going to do here is we would open up a remote shell. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this install and we're going to run it on our Linux machine. As you see here, it's going through the installation process. Okay, so the process is completed. So now we've installed the log analytics agent on this Linux device that we're simulating as being not within Azure itself. So you'll notice here, the process is a little bit different. If you have the Azure Arc enabled agent, then you can use what's called data collection rules. If you don't, then you have to manually install the agent through either manual or through some policy or script or something on every machine that you want this on. So you have to remember to do that. The new DCR with the AMA agent streamlines things, makes things a lot more efficient for those that are managing, log capturing security within their enterprise. So there you go, guys. We've gone in and we've demonstrated how to install various connectors for Sentinel for various resources. Hopefully you've enjoyed this demonstration here. And again, practice in your labs. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
In this learning path, we covered Microsoft Sentinel connectors. We talked about the different types of connectors and the types of data that they pull. We talked about the Content Hub solution. We looked at what it included, such as your data connectors, parsers, workbooks, analytics rules, as well as many other things. We talked about data collection rules and how they're used and how they can be used to manage data collection within your environment. We also talked about threat intelligence Content Hub solution, and how it provides connectors for the Taxi protocol, for Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, and the overall threat intelligence platforms. We talked about Microsoft Defender. Specifically, Microsoft Sentinel provides built-in connectors for Microsoft Defender solutions, including Defender for XDR, Defender for Cloud, Defender for IT, as well as many other Defender products. So now, this concludes Learning Path 8. There are many ways to continue your learning journey. We encourage you to watch other videos in this course, or if you choose, search out your next favorite topic on the Microsoft Learn site. And to access that, you will go to aka.ms/learn. Thank you.